Oh wait, I need to press. Oh yeah. Hello everybody that is here and everybody that is watching on the recorded part, the recorded session. Welcome to Live in the Hive. Sorry, I've had too much coffee. It's probably going to be like that all the way through. Um, my name is Laura Rathbone, and I am a physiotherapist, which I'm very happy because today I can actually say that title because now I am back on the health register in the Netherlands, or I'm on the health register in the Netherlands since immigrating, and that has been a bit of a challenge and a bit of a journey. But I'm a physiotherapist. I'm a pain specialized therapist. I'm very interested in pain and whole person care and progressive, inclusive models. And yes, that's a little bit about me. And I'm joined by the wonderful Joanna Taylor. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jo?
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Laura, and good afternoon, as it is now. Um, so, a little bit about me. I'm Joanna Taylor, and I'm a business coach for health professionals. I help clinicians wanting to start or grow businesses to bring their ideas into reality. And Laura has been a client of mine for several years now, and we've known each other for quite a long time, so that's how this little relationship sort of started, and that's
Yeah.
that's how we ended up doing what we're doing today. I've been working with quite well-known healthcare brands for about 20 years now. I'm director of Noi in Europe. I am Lorimer Mosley's agent in Europe.
That sounds so glamorous, but
I know, which he thinks is hilarious. It makes him feel like 007, I think. But we have the Master Sessions brand for Lorimer when he's doing his online teaching and in person. And I'm also involved with La Pub Scientifique as their sort of business development and communications board. And I'm also founder of a male pelvic health group called Pelvic Pain Matters with Carl Monaghan. He's the founder of that. So yeah, I have a lot of private clients as well. So people like Laura who are working independently, and that's that. I love everything I do. Just have to say.
So I did a panel recently. I'm so glad you said that you love what you do, right? Because I was on a panel recently with the University of Nottingham, and Debbie Butler was there. Debbie Butler is a pain advocate, a patient advocate, and she joined us on the panel. And one of her final comments to the whole group was, enjoy it because you have a great job. And I was just like, it was so beautifully simple. And I was like, yes, that is exactly it. We do need to remember to enjoy what we do for work because we're there like most of the time, right? Spend most
And that is what we're here for, isn't it, Laura? Really, that's what these sessions are about. They're helping people to enjoy what they
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
So we're helping people to overcome obstacles in the way they're feeling about what they do to
yeah.
actually get to that point of just loving it again.
Right, but I would say not in a hedonic way. So hedonic is where like basically you value pleasure and joy over all else. So you refuse to acknowledge that there are difficult stuff and there's unpleasant and uncomfortable things. But like what we're um facilitating in each other, which I love about that, and also like with the people that we work with, is this kind of acceptance that, there are difficult things about just being a human, right? Being a
Mm.
grown up, being a clinician, being a business owner. It's uncomfortable, it's hard, it's tricky. But that doesn't mean that it can't also be something that brings you great fulfillment and feelings of joy and contentment and satiation and all that lovely stuff, as well as happiness and pleasure and fun and yeah.
100%. You can't have a Friday night without Monday morning, can you?
Oh yeah, I love Monday mornings. Me, I'm a bit of a weirdo.
Well, yeah, but I do. I'm a stranger. I do actually.
It's because I see you at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. I'm like, it's
I
made my
know,
Mondays much brighter. Okay,
exciting.
so
Okay,
one of
so
the things we want to talk about today is the like for me, this is like the elephant in the room. It's imposter syndrome. And it's something that I live through every day, pretty much. Except for when I'm like basically not seeing people. So if I'm not seeing people, I'm all right. But as soon as I go into a relational or an intersubjective space, I immediately start feeling like an imposter. Um, and I think that's something that lots of people feel. And as a clinician that works with clinicians, I hear this over and over and over again as being like a real dominant feature of people's experience in clinical practice. Um, and I know that you've been working with me for the last couple of years, so you've been on the sort of the brunt end of my imposter syndrome, where I'm like, ah! so,
Which,
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
apologies for that.
well, from my perspective, it's crazy, because I see you in a different light completely. But that is the same for nearly all of my private clients. They
Mm,
all go through the same thing,
mm.
and they don't see themselves the way the rest of the world sees them.
Right. That's interesting that you, I'm sorry, I've just picked up on that sentence that they don't see themselves the way the rest of the world sees them. I think that's, I don't know whether I think that's a fair statement, Joe, because I think that there are like there are some people within your world who see us differently. Like, for example, I know that you see me sometimes in a way that I just don't see myself, and I need you to reflect back to me. No, actually, Laura, you're doing a good job, right? You're working hard, you're holding your ethics, as far as I can see from an outsider, you're congruent with yourself. But there are but society is key in, I think, facilitating this feeling of not being somehow good enough, or not conforming, not being
Mm.
inside these very tight restrictive bounds. So I don't know whether the rest of the world really does see me like that, but I'm really glad that you do, because you're an important voice within my world.
Yeah,
And that's partly what we want to talk about today as well, isn't it? Like how
it
we
is.
sorry, did I
It
just
is.
I went off on a rant then, I think.
No, 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 no. These rants are really important. You bring up really important points. They always touch on the right stuff. So we're going to follow the flow. We've got a
Yes.
couple of key points that we want to cover during the session, haven't we? So we're going to
Yeah.
be talking. We're going to be asking. We're going to be putting these questions out there. So the first question that we're going to talk around is, why do we need to understand imposter syndrome? Why is it important?
Hmm.
What do we think it is? What does it feel like? And why do we need to work with it and on it?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so kicking off with the first one of those questions, Laura,
Mhm.
why do we need to understand imposter syndrome? Why does it even matter?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you've got lots of things to say about this as well, Joe. But for me, why do I think it's important for me and for the people that I work with who are experiencing imposter syndrome to understand it is because it so often is influencing the decisions that I make about my next step, um, or about not only my next step, but like how much can I expand myself outside of that narrow cultural norm. And obviously I'm a physio, so I'm speaking from a physio perspective, but I'm also a woman, I'm also queer, I'm married, I'm a mother. Like, intersectionally, society is telling me in many different ways what I am supposed to be, all the time. And so imposter syndrome is or this feeling of somehow never quite getting it right makes me feel apprehensive, maybe a little bit vulnerable, a little bit self-protective. And maybe those things might contribute to me choosing not to do something that's in line with something I believe in, or something that I feel is important, or something that I think would make myself more visible, maybe more at risk, but is important to me, meaningful to me. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to work alongside, is this living, this congruency, this authentic living, or what
Mm,
Sartre would call good faith, living within good faith. Um, because that's important to us. I think it's easier, it's less energy demanding in some ways,
mm.
or I mean, it's still energy demanding. You still have to invest energy in it, but it feels like good energy. I don't know if
It's
that makes
different
any sense.
energy.
Yeah.
It's like a positive energy, isn't
It's a
it? When you
different
feel like you're
load.
acting in line with your beliefs, yourself, your
Yeah.
energy, you know, who you are as a person. And
Yeah.
I agree completely with everything you said. I think that I think from my point of view, what I see is with my clients is that we need to understand, they need to understand imposter syndrome and what it is, because it fundamentally holds them back
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
being the best that they can be, from being that person that they want to be,
Mm-hmm.
from doing the things that they want to do, and it holds them back.
Yeah.
And that's why once you start to unpick it, you start to see people start to fly. They
Yeah.
start to
Yeah.
they become different, and they start to fly into themselves.
Yeah. I want to just double down on something you said there because I think it could sort of get missed. So you said being the best that they can be, and I want to be really like careful about that because that doesn't mean the most successful or like publicly available or like the biggest following ship or all of that stuff. It means that every day you get to live in a way that feels really good for you
Yeah,
and
your
across
authentic self.
right across those roles. And I say that because when I started out on this journey, I definitely felt pressure to, like, if I was going to be a clinician on social media, I had to do it in a certain way, and actually when I think about the kind of voices and clinicians I was looking up to, they just didn't represent me at all. Like they were like, middle-aged white straight men who were being very successful, and more power to them, right? Because there's enough space for everybody to be successful, but the way they did it and the way they got their success was just, it was clanging with me all the time, and I was constantly having to work in order to try and look like that. And now I just look like me. Which
And that is why we need to understand imposter syndrome, because if you don't work as you are not sharing your uniqueness, your skills, your knowledge, your vibrancy, your energy, everything about you with the world. And
and
that is what we're here for, isn't it? To
yeah,
celebrate people's uniqueness and to support them, to
yeah,
share that
yeah,
uniqueness with the world, because that's what helps them to grow, but
yeah.
everybody else to grow as well.
Yeah. And of course, if you're doing that, you're always in a performance, right? And so then you could then if you're performing, then there is always the possibility that you could get it wrong. But if you're just being yourself, how can you ever be wrong? You're just
Yeah,
yourself, you know? Um,
absolutely. So
yeah.
I hope we've kind of got, I hope that's clear for anybody that's listening. That idea about why we feel like it's really important to
Hmm.
understand imposter syndrome, because you're holding yourself in, you're holding yourself back
Mm,
from sharing that and being that and
mm,
working in that way.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
that's a little bit
just
about why it's important. But what, like, because I know that you work with this very often, but what do we think it is then? What is imposter syndrome?
imposter syndrome, I think, from my experience, and this is what I believe, my personal experience, my experience with clients, my personal experience, um, uh, and my personal growth journey evolution, is that it's intrinsically linked to confidence.
Hmm.
And by confidence, Laura, we have to just say a little bit about confidence here.
It's okay.
We're not talking about ego here. We're not talking about bravado. We're talking about something quite different. Confidence is often, people don't, I'll go on and talk about that again in a little bit, but it's not necessarily what people think.
Mm,
Um, but it's intrinsically linked to confidence, and it's intrinsically linked to being worried about what people think of you,
yeah.
and that whether you are, I'm just going to reverse my notes here because I want to get this right. It's linked to the need to look and feel good and to
Hmm.
have approval.
Hmm.
You're worried about what other people think of you, and
Mm,
in my opinion, my experience, those are the two things that underpin imposter syndrome:
yeah.
confidence or maybe lack of it, and that fear of what people think of you.
Yeah. So in healthcare, we might call that like an external locus of control. So we're constantly seeking somebody other than ourselves to tell us
Mm,
that we're doing it right and that we're doing a good job, or to seek approval from outside of ourselves.
mm,
Um, and it's not fixed. So it's not like if I have an external locus of control in this context, I have it in all contexts that, but it's just that in this context, in these moments, in these environments, in these situations, I externalize my locus of control, and I'm constantly looking for cues from my environment that I'm somehow in the right space. I'm somehow doing this right. And that might be because I'm not actually performing or acting in a way that feels right for me. So I need somebody else to tell me, yes, you fit in. You're part of the
yeah,
gang. You're in.
yeah.
You're in the circle. Um,
And true confidence is often people who are often the most confident aren't the loudest people in the room. They're the confidence, and I'm just going to tell you now what I believe that confidence comes from. And I think
okay.
this is and I'm going to read this again.
Yeah, go for it.
That it's first of all, it's not a feeling, it's an action. It's embodied in action. And you build confidence. You can build confidence. And Laura said before we came on, it's mastery rather than confidence.
Mm,
And you can build it and develop it and grow it through action and repetition. And often the things that you have to do and you have to repeat are the things that scare you.
mm-hmm,
And it's that repeat, 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 repeat that enables you to build confidence.
mm-hmm.
And that underpins the imposter syndrome that we're talking about today.
Yeah. I think, do you think though that even when we think about the word, so the word confidence, we had a chat about before we came on, because it
Mm,
can be misinterpreted and it comes with
yeah.
baggage, right? It's not a neutral word. And then and is it something that we can build, or is it something that needs space to grow? These are the kind of like really semantic, annoying, frustrating questions, like discussions I have about words.
Yeah.
But like, do you think that do you think that even let's say, for example, we could give somebody 100% confidence, we could just plonk it on them and all of a sudden they're confident, would the imposter syndrome go away? Or is it more that people build up the skill and the mastery of doing meaningful but scary things alongside this feeling of vulnerability, fear, and potential shame? Because
Well,
that's
I
what
think,
imposter syndrome is. It's the fear of potential shame.
yeah. Well, I think that what I actually think, Laura, is I think that what to your point there, I think that they kind of go hand in hand. So you're always going to have that feeling of imposter syndrome. I have it. You
Hmm.
still have it, don't you?
All the time. Got it right now.
All the time. When do we have that feeling of imposter syndrome?
When we're
When we're going to
doing,
do something new.
or not even new, but just meaningful, right? Because you want to get it right.
Scary,
Yeah.
meaningful.
Hmm.
You want something to work. You want to try something new. You've
Yeah.
not done it before.
Yeah. Okay.
That's when we get it. We
Yeah.
get it when we're about to embark on a new project, when we're about to walk into a room of people who, we're not comfortable with. We've not done that
Right.
before. When we're going to do a Facebook Live, when we're going to do a podcast, we get that
Hmm.
sense. We get that feeling. But the thing is that where the confidence ties in is that if you've already been practicing this skill and you recognize that confidence is built
Mm.
through repetition,
Hmm.
through action, and
Hmm.
doing the things that scare you, then what you think is, okay, I know I've got this thing that's coming up. It's a bit scary. It's new to me. I want to do really well at it. I know I'm going to have these feelings around it, but guess what? I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm.
And I'm not just going to do it once. I'm going to do it over and over and over again until
Mm.
I've mastered it.
Mm.
And then the next thing comes. And
Mm.
it's this constant sort of next thing comes, next thing comes, next thing
Mm.
comes. But what does happen
Mm.
is that your trust in yourself increases. You trust,
Yep.
you know what to do, when you start to get those feelings coming in, because you've already proven to yourself many, many, many times that you trust yourself enough to do the necessary action, to do the number of repeats that you need to do before you start to feel better about it.
Right. So it's not mastery over an action, it's mastery over imposter syndrome.
It is mastery. It is mastery over imposter syndrome, and recognizing your mental gymnastics that start to happen. They start to creep in. They're like, oh, shit. Can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I know I've done this before, but oh my God, this one's so much bigger. Can I really do this? This is so much harder. This is, you know, a much more complex situation. Am I going to be able to function? You take a step back and you go, of course you can do it. You've done it so many times before. This is just you up leveling. And this is where we started talking about glass ceilings and stuff. And it's some of my business coaches said to me, they said, just before you're about to take a massive leap up, you come to the bottom of the cliff.
Yeah.
And the cliff looks so high and so difficult to climb up. Yeah. And it's these feelings that you're getting at the bottom of the cliff. But as soon as you take the first step, you're on that climb.
Yeah.
And there's another cliff next week, next month, next year.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also linked to this idea of perfectionism, right? That if I'm going to make this climb, I have to be sure I'm going to do it perfectly before I start. So there's also that feeling, right? Of like, oh, am I going to be perfect at it? And I think this is really interesting because, so there's a couple of things that I've got sort of swimming in my mind that I wanted to say, and I don't know how linked they are until I say them. But the first thing is, right, the first thing is, like, back in, like, imposter syndrome is not new. It was, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, so I'm going to have to read them. But back in 1978, the term was introduced by Dr. Pauline Clance and back to Suzanne Imes, and they were specifically looking at the experience of high achieving women, right? So we have to acknowledge that the imposter syndrome is tells us something about society, right? Because back in the 70s, women still didn't have equality. We still don't even today. So it's no surprise that women experience imposter syndrome. That's not to say they're the only people in the world that experiences imposter syndrome. Of course, like, it affects all people. But it's interesting that the work was saying that, you know, even in the high achieving women couldn't acknowledge the value of their own labor. And I think and their own wins. I think that's really important. And then there's this other statistic that's going around, which I can't even remember for the life of me where it came from, but it's like, it's become kind of like an analogy now. But like, that when it comes to applying for a job, a woman won't apply until she meets 95% of the criteria, or 90%, really, really almost 100% of the criteria. And a man will apply when they reach about 40 to 50%. So there's something about society saying it's okay to be unprepared for this. It's okay to fail at this. It's okay for some groups of society that doesn't necessarily extend out to all of us. And maybe that's because we don't perceive it, or maybe it's because that's really how society is for groups of people who experience more imposter syndrome. So there's something there around society that's important. And so we've got two things, haven't we, happening all the time. This is what I've been having a lot of conversations about recently, is we've got this ideological sense of what it is to be us and what we want the future to be and how we can move towards that. What can we change in society and in structure? Absolutely needs to happen. But we've also got this pragmatic thing of, but here I am doing it, and I need skills to also be able to acknowledge and be with it and overcome this and master being a person with imposter syndrome, going into scary experiences and still knowing that I can be flexible and that I can, you know, I don't have to do it perfectly. I can hold myself to whichever standard I think is compassionate towards myself. And
can I jump in?
Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
Getting a word in edgeways.
No, I totally hear what you're saying, and I get it. I get what you're saying completely. And on a societal level, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, there are reasons these situations have been constructed. I totally get it. So we only have a certain amount of control over things at a societal level, but we do have control over ourselves.
Exactly.
and this is where it completely comes in to our final point, Laura, which you've actually segued into really nicely. We didn't plan it this way, did we? We just kind of,
Never
well,
planned.
we're winging it,
Yeah.
but it is about the idea of support.
Yeah.
And so doing this stuff alone is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody, when I worked with you, when I've worked with my other private clients, what I see all the time are just these amazingly talented, just incredible, effervescent, energetic, bright, vibrant people who are coming back to our initial point, being held back.
Yeah.
And what they need is somebody or some people in their life to support them into through these feelings that are completely normal, to support them into the mastery of that imposter syndrome. Because when they start to master it, they literally fly like birds. It's unbelievable. I see it all the time with my clients. Once they start to get a bit of belief that they're getting a handle on it, they are like, there is no fucking stopping me.
Unleashed.
Pardon?
They're unleashed.
They are. They are. But and the thing, it's happened to me. It's happened to me as well personally. So I've seen it with you, Laura. I've seen, because I know we work together, but you also have other people that are coaching you in your life.
Yeah.
I see it with my other business clients. I've experienced it personally. I have business mentors, business coaches, and about 2 years ago, I was I started like quite a really intensive 6-month coaching program with these two spectacular women who I think are amazing. And they said one of the first things that we did in the session was talking about this glass ceiling. And they said, Jo, why are you putting a ceiling on? They said, what would you like to earn next year? And I wrote down a figure, and they said, really? And I said, no, actually, that's what I want to earn, but this is what I think I'm capable of earning. And they said, let's get rid of that one.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can do whatever you want to do. But there's no way I would have removed the ceilings that I put on myself. I wouldn't be sat here today with you, Laura, if I hadn't have had those two women tell me I could do whatever I wanted to do. I never would have been doing lives on Facebook. I never would have set up my my business coaching business, which I absolutely adore. I love what I do. I love my clients. Just fires me up every day. But I needed somebody to guide me through that and say, Jo, you have absolutely got what it takes to do this. You have got what it takes to be as good as us and better. And that is it. I can't remember what we were saying before we came on, Laura, but it was absolutely about that support and that mentoring and how key that is to find people who cheerlead you, who tell you that you can, and who can see through those limitations that you're putting on yourself. And they're seeing you, and they're seeing you like how other people see you, and they can see your potential, not with those limiting beliefs stripped away, because they haven't got them. They're seeing you for you.
I mean, that's it, isn't it? So there is a saying, isn't it, that all of our cages are in the mind, right? Not that the mind is a separate thing, but it's like, it's both constructed within ourselves and within society, right? So society might put these boundaries out, and then we agree to them, and by agreeing to them, we sort of lock them in from both sides. And I think these are the challenging bits. And how does this relate to healthcare is what I keep thinking, because of course, like in business, it might be that, I mean, what you're focusing on and what you're trying to break through and what you're trying to expand on will be different for all people in different contexts. But it's the same principle, it's the same process. What is it that, where is the areas in your, say, in your clinical life or in your practice or in your environment where you feel restricted? Now, is that restriction something that you can change? And certainly for me, when I was growing up as a physio, I found it there was so many situations where I had to bracket my knowledge of pain science, of the evidence, of just compassion and my
Mm,
philosophy, so that I could, answer questions that were actually more in line with the person asking the question, in
mm,
order to score the points, in order to get into the group, right? And I'm constantly on this
yeah.
journey with physiotherapy, as you know, right? It's been a constant battle of, like almost feeling incongruent with myself in order to be part of that group. Um,
Mm. It's so interesting, Laura, what you're saying, and that's a really good point. And I'm
mhm,
glad that you brought this back round to, how
mhm,
it's okay. It kind of, we can understand how it applies in business, but how does that apply in
yeah.
clinical practice? And so much of this, it comes down to exactly what you said, is that people, they want to speak up. They want to. It doesn't matter whether you're working for you independently, whether you're working within a system,
Hmm.
a bigger system. It's about feeling comfortable and confident enough to work as you, to
Hmm.
work with your values, your ideas.
Hmm.
And so often that comes down to being able to say no
Hmm.
when you don't want to do something.
This is not, yeah,
This is
this is a huge
these are
issue.
all
Yeah.
about these are all
Boundaries.
intrinsically linked to confidence.
Yeah.
It's about being confident allows you to say no,
Hmm.
right? And not be bothered what that person thinks about you saying no. It
Mm.
also allows you to maybe take some risks. So
Mm.
to try something that
Mm.
you really, really believe in with a patient, within a
Mm.
team, within a
Yeah.
structure to try and make something better. And it makes you a good negotiator. Now,
Can I add one to
negotiate
there though? Because I think
um
it also means you can turn away or walk away. Because
yes.
all of the things that you've said require a certain level of safety to do that. Now, like I know that as a woman, there are times when I go into spaces and I don't feel safe to do that. As a queer person, I don't. I know from
Mm,
listening to the stories of clinicians of color and clinicians with different religious backgrounds and trans clinicians, like it's
mm,
hard to feel safe to take risks. You might be absolutely sure that what you think is right, but it's hard to stay in a system and to be safe within a system.
mm,
So I want to also make sure that we contemplate and think about, well, you might be in a system that doesn't fully you might be in a system that is quite rigid, um, but that doesn't mean all the people you engage with have to represent that system, you know? And that's what we come
yeah,
back to, is that idea of like the group that we're talking to and that support, being in a system
yeah,
that is rigid, but having one person in your gang that's like, hey, yeah, but you're doing a great job. And
yeah,
how can we help you to, start expressing yourself either more inside that system, or find
mm,
ways to step out of the system but still thrive and still be successful. And I'm specifically
yeah,
thinking here about being in public health, being in employment, and
yeah,
then thinking, okay, I'm going to start shifting towards something more independent, or I'm going to, which is one option, or what you're saying, which I think is also really important, I'm going to figure out how to advocate for what I want to represent within this system and
yeah,
press out that
yeah.
space. Yeah,
Because what you see, what you tend to find, because coming back to that idea
yeah,
of being valuing being respected, not liked.
yeah,
And it's like, people, if you're willing to say no to things, if you're willing to have a voice and say what you think and what you
yeah.
believe,
Mm,
and then without feeling terrified about whether people are going to like you or not,
mm,
then you then start to, what you start to get is you start to attract respect,
mm,
not that, agreeing, not that need to be liked. And that elevates you to a very, very different position,
yeah,
whatever system you're working in. But whether,
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about, Laura, whether you're working in a structure, in a system,
mm,
it it you start to attract respect from your peers and the rest of the people that you're working with. There is just
yeah,
one thing I want to say here, and
yeah,
this doesn't matter where you work, right? It doesn't matter what sector you're in,
mhm,
but you can at any one point in time, when you're starting to feel, this is just a little trick really, if any one point in time, if you're starting to feel that sense of, oh my God, I daren't say what I want to say in the meeting, I daren't put my hand up, I daren't say, actually, I disagree, I think maybe this might be better. Ask yourself this question. And the question is, if you had more confidence right now, right at this moment in time, how would you act differently? What would
Yeah.
you do at this moment in time if you had got to that point of confidence that you would like to achieve? What would you do? Because often you already have it right within you. It's right there, right at your disposal. And it really is just having that, to take that thing, right, do you know, I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to say, I would like to do it this way, or I'd like to try this, or I believe this, I've seen this, can I share this with you? And this is so, it's just so often like that question in your head. How would I act right now in this moment if I had more confidence?
And then followed up with, am I safe to do that in this situation? Because I do want to keep coming back to this, because I think that as white women, as relatively middle class women, we enjoy a position where we walk into a room and people kind of already like us, you know, because that's how society is set up. We already fit the mold of what is acceptable. And so as white middle class women, putting our hand up means we might lose some of that likability, and that's what's very scary. But if you're coming, say for example, if you're a queer person coming forwards and you're visibly queer in a space where queerness is not accepted and embraced, then you're already feeling that walking into a room. And so it's important that when we think about being brave, it doesn't only include being disruptive, you know, because being brave is also stepping away, and that like being self assured or self-aware, or that sort of self-belief, that feeling of like it's autonomy, isn't it, we're talking about here? We're talking about autonomy. And I think that's where imposter syndrome is important. I think it's about, if you don't feel entirely autonomous, you are more likely to have this experience of imposter syndrome, because you're less likely to be able to use your internal knowledge and internal feedback to know whether what you're doing is good or in line with your ethics or morality or beliefs.
And this is where your support comes back.
Exactly.
These can be internal support in your team, your department, co-workers. But this is where external support, it's like people like Laura, people like me, people who offer mentoring and coaching. This is, and Laura and I, we both have coaches. We absolutely do. We both have mentors, and we cannot advocate this strongly enough. Just how important that is to give you that support network, and also that voice of a bit of reason. It's like, is this right? Yes, that's absolutely right. You're doing this. You're doing it right. If it's anything different, something's wrong. And sometimes we need somebody else to go, do you know what? That is not right. That isn't right. Because people can get very lost, questioning themselves and going, oh my God, am I going mad? Am I really?
Right.
And
that's why you need a
that's
consistent relationship, a consistent relationship.
Yeah, 100%. It's where
Someone
you
who
have these
knows
sounding, 100%.
Yeah.
Right, Laura, I think
Gosh.
we've run over. I know, because we're
time.
really crap. We're crap at time management, aren't we?
There's our boundaries.
We get so excited. We get so excited. I think we're gonna stop there. We hope that anybody that has been that is watching this, watches on replay, finds some of this useful. If you do, then you can contact either me or Laura through the Hive at the moment. So if you want to chat to either of us, you can work with Laura privately. She's got pods. Go on, Laura. What have you got? You've got your subscription, haven't you?
Yeah, so like the subscription is that place for ongoing sort of like maintenance and support for people that are working in places where they don't have that. So it's a place for growth, it's a place for connection, and it's a place for support. And then the pods, I've got a new pod coming out. It's available. It's starting in May. And that's 6 months of small group coaching where we work on your clinical aspirations and what it is that you want. And there's just a bit of a higher level of in sort of interactive support there as well. And then there's also one-to-one work as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, and tell people how they can work with you, Joe, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are anybody that's looking to either come out of employment and move into private practice, or start a business, or grow a business that you feel like has got a bit stagnant, then you can drop me a note via Laura in the Hive. I'm having my website built at the moment. So in a couple of weeks, I'll have a www place to contact me. But for now, you can just drop Laura a message
I love
and
that
she'll
you did
pass
the
you on.
www dot
That's what a
the
website
world
is.
on the World Wide Web.
Yeah, I'm having a website built on the world wide, and it will be released, Laura, on the
Yeah.
World Wide Web.
Fantastic. I'm excited. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So you can get in touch via the Hive, and also I'll put
Yeah,
we'll put like social media links on there because you are on
yeah, cool.
Instagram as well. So yeah.
I am on Instagram, yeah. So thanks, Laura, and thanks for joining me today, and
Yeah.
me joining you, and it's just
Yeah.
such great fun. Thank
I
you so much,
know.
and keep your eyes open because we're going to be doing more of these. We've got a few
We are.
exciting things in the background which we'll be able to share with people soon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Fantastic.
yeah,
Okay.
exciting. Okay, take
Wonderful.
care. All right, have a lovely
Bye.
weekend. Bye.
Bye.